what happened in Tibet on the way from 640 of the Jokang, which we're going to go see today, on the way to 1640 to the establishment of the Ganden Palace government under the fifth Dalai Lama, of the unique government in world history, actually, I think. And I'll try to explain that to you. In this middle, at this sort of toward the end of it, 1410, is a kind of wonderful symbolic moment when the society achieved what I think of as millennial consciousness. And the symbol of that was that the Tsongkhapa made a very elaborate set of ornaments, breast ornaments, earrings, a crown, which he offered to the Jo image in the Jokang, which we'll see when we go into the inner sanctum of sanctums. Which is, they know, I mean, nobody thinks, actually, well, some of the peasants might think it actually is Buddha. And because there are many stories in Tibet of the Jo Rinpoche meeting someone on a pass and saying, now don't go to Lhasa this week, there's been an earthquake or something, and don't do this. You know, because there's such a presence in the Tibetan imagination. But they also know that it's just a symbol of the actual Buddha, who they don't think of as just dead in the past. In India, they think of as sort of astrally present every time. Like, you know, like George Lucas's Obi-Wan Kenobi up in the later movies, you know, in his like astral body, and he says, Luke, the Force, Luke. And you see him like transparent, you know. So the Tibetans think of the Buddha like that rather than just dead. You know? So you can show up anytime and tell you to, when you're about to lose your temper, when you're about to freak out, when you're about to miss your honeymoon partner too much. He tells you, be with the Force. The Force has been your honeymoon partner. It'll be okay. And so anyway, Tsongkhapa offered that, and that was a symbol of the Tibetans finally reaching a point in this 1,000-year progression where they began to feel as if the Buddha was right there with them. Because the ornaments symbolize what's called the beatific body of a Buddha. And the beatific body of a Buddha, when you attain Buddhahood, you know, you have what's called a truth body or a dharma body, where you feel you are the entire infinite universe yourself. Just like I would thump on my shoulders. I better not do it too hard or fall over this time. But to thump on my chest and say, this body is me. So there's nothing to thump on when you have the Dharmakaya, because everything is you. Everyone else is you. The tables, all the inanimate objects, the galaxies are you. You have a feeling like that is with you as solidly as the feeling of your body. That's what Buddhahood is, one aspect of Buddhahood. The second aspect of Buddhahood is your form body, that you're present in certain different ways within that, in a way that others can perceive. And one of the subtle level of that is where you're sort of a feeling of bliss that is also everywhere. You feel you are sort of like the basic radiance of bliss in the universe. You're like, you know, like these 5 colors that you often see, you know, diamond, ruby, emerald, sapphire, topaz, gold, you know, those 5 colors. You are these 5 colored radiant energies everywhere in every atom. That's called the Sambhoga, or beatific body. And that is where Buddhas are always present. They're like eternal in that realm, and even in their own subjectivity. Because within infinity, infinite numbers of beings' sense of bliss can fit. There's no, it's not like one person gets to be the blissful one, the other ones are like somehow put on a shelf around the blissful one, the way theistic people do it. You know, when there's just one God, everybody else is like a little thing. But everybody becomes the ultimate, you know. And then the Shakyamuni form, like a Buddha form that would walk around the earth, is what they call the emanation body, which is perceived by other beings who themselves feel like us, and if any of you are Buddhas, excuse me, but they feel like, I'm just me over here inside this skin, and I'm not any of you, and I'm not the world, and therefore it's me versus the world, and of course that's a rather difficult scene, you know. So then the Buddha emanates as a form that we see as like ourselves, as if it were a separate person. Because otherwise we wouldn't know how to relate to someone who was simultaneously themselves and us. Like, how would you talk to them? Because they're you at the same time. It would be a little bit difficult. We wouldn't be able to perceive such a being, actually. So by putting the crown ornament Tsongkhapa did in 1409 on the Jo image, he was affirming in the Tibetan vision the potential of seeing the subtle realm presence of the Buddha all the time. And as I said, that's the millennial consciousness, in other words, or you call it fruitional consciousness. And then let me underline again the difference between that and our consciousness, our habitual consciousness, which is our linear consciousness. And actually nowadays in the 21st century, and with the Western Christian fundamentalism, we're kind of in pre-apocalyptic consciousness where there's millions of people in our country, those of you who are American, most of us, millions of people are expecting the world to come to an end and only them to be saved by somebody. So that's going to happen later, and now they're in this mode where everything is imperfect, so they can take that imperfection as an excuse to be behave rather imperfectly, to put it mildly, violently and imperfectly, because they think that's prophesied. But millennial consciousness is, after that has all happened, it's already happened, so there's nothing to be bad about to anybody. Everything is already perfect, and therefore if you see imperfection, if you see someone as no good, if I get mad at W and I think that he's not my mom, which I know he is, I mean in the previous life he was my mom, Mrs. W, and so I get really mad at him, then that's my misperception actually. I'm not seeing how things are really going. If I see in Lhasa something I don't like, some ugly building, something, I don't realize that this is part of a sort of, actually Buddhas are in every atom of that building, even though it's ugly by some standard, even though there's some oppression going on. I don't, but millennial consciousness says the imperfection lies in my mind. I can shift my mind. There's no obstruction. I don't have to wait until after there's an apocalypse, after there's a final war, after something. I can now shift my mind, and then even in the middle of hell, in the middle of a dungeon, in the middle of anything, I can be illuminated, enlightened, and blissful. And I can share that with other beings, even if they're torturing me, type of thing. Which we can all admit is a very exalted achievement. But that is the heart of Tibetan culture, actually. Why the Tibetans bore so much difficulties they have borne in the last century, since the British first invaded, and then there have been another bunch of invasions, and there have been some that we, out of delicacy, don't discuss in this kind of group, at this time, in this place. But there are, how can they bear that without turning into hatred and bitterness and becoming terrorists? Then people become terrorists when they feel the world is so much against them and their family and their tribe that they're completely eradicated, then they want to go eradicate other people because they are projecting the imperfection on the evil outside them on other people. The millennial consciousness says anything, even I see, it seems to be, this is Avalokiteshvara's paradise. The millennial thing of the Tibetans is, this is Avalokiteshvara's paradise. Avalokiteshvara is the incarnation of the infinite compassion of all enlightened beings, and is able to change things at will, any time, to if anybody really needs it. And therefore, it's our perception to be changed. It isn't. I'm in that paradise. If it seems overrun with this, if it seems ruined by that, if something's wrong, it's my fault. You don't blame the other person as a victim. I blame myself as a victim. I say I am expiating some past negative action that I did. But if I switch with wisdom, it's not like there's going to be another 100 years of expiating. If I switch now, use wisdom and understand the true nature of reality, I'll find that Buddha is everywhere, here, in the middle of everything, even the worst things. And that gives them this incredible patience, tolerance that the Shantideva talks about, and the ability to love the enemy, which actually Jesus talked about. Jesus is just like Buddha. He says, don't give me this thing about how you love your family and you love your friends. Everybody does that. You have to love your enemies. Don't give me how you're nice because you didn't murder this guy who mowed their lawn at 4 a.m. in the morning, your neighbor. If you're angry with him, then you're in trouble. In your mind, because that's karma in your mind. That's like a Buddhist teaching. It never would legitimize crusades and things and wars of religious righteousness. Never. So it's not just Buddhism, this vision is possible in any of the world traditions. It's possible even in a secular person, if love is perceived as powerful enough. And the source of seeing that love is in our own hearts. I brought you here because I wanted you to see the whole thing. I wanted you to see it under its sort of semi-idyllic, like Shangri-La type of aspect. Pat, this especially to Pat, because we were organized, remember, and we shipped it. And then I wanted you to see its reality still somehow surviving underneath a sort of bunch of different circumstances, which we want to restrain our feeling of like, ooh, this, I hate that. We don't want to say that here. It irritates people, and also they might be listening, and we don't want to do that. We want to try to see through that and see that it still lives here in its vulnerability, in its low-heartedness, in the smile of the person who seems to be the loser of some exchange, the poor one, but has a different level of smile than the one who seems dominant, who's like looking all squeezed and narrow and like actually unhappy, but in charge, in power. And the one who's being like, under the gun is looking smiling anyway. It's actually more happy from the heart, I wanted you to see that, because that's much more interesting and exciting, actually, in a way, rather than just think, well, here I am in New York running around, and then there's this idyllic place over there, we have really idyllic, and I don't want to go to the grubby place where there's problems. I thought it'd be important for people to see that, to really understand this, because this encounter is much greater. The encounter between the sort of apogee of industrial militarism, which in a way our country does represent on the planet. And it supports in other countries too, selling the excess hardware. And, that form of life, being armed to the teeth and grabbing what we want and living for this life only and getting it all now, and when we die will be nothing, so there'll be no consequence and whatever. That, encountering what I call the inner modernity of all of life is rationalized to optimize inner education, education of the heart, but it results in outer vulnerability, and it is crushed and trampled by outer modernity and industrialization and militarism. And it has been crushed by it, and it is a state of being flattened down by it right at this moment, and yet it lives, and yet it's there. And you'll see it today in the Jokhang, in the hearts of the people who come in from the steppe and who are there, and Buddha's still living there to them. I mean, Buddha's still living on the steppe where they are, but then they come to pay respects anyway to the source of it, what they perceive as historical source of it.